Well, Rick is nonverbal. He cannot speak at all. And so, I mean, that was, I can't imagine what a challenge it is for him through life, but for doing the book, it was a real challenge. The way Rick speaks, he has two methods of speaking. Well, let's be more accurate, communicating. Rick's brother Russell, who's several years younger than him, back in the early 1970s, the whole family was frustrated because they knew Rick knew what was going on, but he couldn't communicate. And he was intelligent. And Russell and Rick developed what they call the Russell method, which Rick literally communicates one letter at a time. They broke the alphabet into 5 sections, with A, E, I, O, U being the points of breakout. And so if Rick wants to spell the word yes, you would go, is it an A, an E, an I, an O, a U? Rick will nod his head slightly at U. U by itself? No. W, V, X, Y, if that's right. I don't know the alphabet very well. He nods his head slightly at yes. So literally, the family and his PCAs communicate with Rick one letter at a time. And that's how we did the book. I would ask him questions. His PCA, who's much better at the translation of it than I am, would go through the alphabet, and Rick would answer the questions one letter at a time.
Wow, that must have been a labor of love, Todd, for because it had to be a painstaking process.
It never felt like pain to me because it's such a tremendous story, and I try to reiterate, it's not my story, it's Rick's. Anything, and this is what I got out of the book, anything that you or I can go through on a daily basis is so minuscule compared to what Rick has to go through, that how can I be upset about going through a little bit of a challenge to have the honor of writing a book with Rick? I referred to it in the book. There's one chapter we call Pebble in My Shoe, and that's what it is. Our problems in life are merely pebbles in our shoe compared to something that Rick and people like Rick have to go through on a daily basis.
Their stories are well known. I think I'm fair to say that. A lot of people may not know, but a lot of people do. So what were you trying to convey here? Just their story basically, or a certain message from their story?
Dick Hoyt, his dad, has had 2 books written. One was called It's Only a Mountain, and one was called Devoted. And those were about the Hoyts, primarily by Dick, but primarily about them as racers, as father and son, but also it's about their running career. It's really important to Rick to let people know that he's a college graduate. He graduated Boston University with his degree in special education. It took him 9 years to do so, and Rick has a tremendous sense of humor. And what he says when you ask him about the 9 years it took to graduate BU, he says he was a bit of a party animal. so it took him longer than most. He lives independently. He has a PCA or a rotation of PCAs, personal care attendants, with him during the day. But he lives independently in an apartment by himself. He sleeps by himself at night with no PCA present. And it was important, a lot of disabled people look at them as if they're mentally affected too. And Rick is relegated to a wheelchair. He doesn't speak. He can't eat on his own. He's bathed by a PCA, but he's a living, breathing, intelligent human being, and that's what he wanted to convey in the book. The book is told partly by stories by Rick, partly by me, and then we enlisted, I guess it's called, the help of 15 friends/authors from his life who also wrote chapters. And so I kind of call the book the story of Rick Hoyt as told by Rick Hoyt and the people who he inspired. So there's a story by Dick, there's a story by each of his brothers, Kirk Jocelyn, who is the president of Central Massachusetts Easter Seals, wrote a chapter. A gentleman from Ironman Hawaii, because Dick and Rick both competed the Ironman race in Hawaii and are the 25th and 26th members of the Ironman Hall of Fame. So bottom line, we got stories from the people who Rick has impacted in his life. And it just, I can't be more pleased the way the book came out, and I guess modestly say very little of it had to do with me. It's amazing that the people who turned in chapters from the first word to the last are so filled with humor and emotion and motivation. The book is awesome, if I can say so for myself.
Now we are visiting with Todd Civin, the author of One Letter at a Time. Todd, the Hoyts became famous, as you mentioned, the Ironman, by competing in major events as a father and son team. Tell us how they began, why they began doing that, and just physically how they accomplished this.
Rick was in high school at the time, and his gym teacher. Rick didn't want to take gym class because he didn't think that he would be able to participate, and his gym teacher insisted that he take gym class. Rick's mother and father, Judy and Dick, were thrilled to hear this because they wanted to include him in everything. And the stories in the book share that. Some of them are incredible. Dick carrying Rick up a mountain on his shoulders because if Rob and Russell, the two other brothers, participated, Rick was to participate too. So the gym teacher took him to a college basketball game in Westfield, Massachusetts, and a lacrosse player had been injured in a game. Well, maybe, I think it was in an accident, forgive me. And so they had a benefit road race to raise money for his